Hi, welcome to our podcast. Today we're talking about creating boundaries in our life and how this helps with our healing. We'll be back in a minute.
Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Dr. Michael Longyear. This is my wife, Dr. Meaghan Longyear. We practice together in Jacksonville, Florida. We have kind of a weird practice. She got me two podcasts in a row here, 2 sessions in a row with some I'll call them weird topics or woo topics, whatever. This is, the last one, if you guys joined us for the Cosmic Connections one, I thought that one was a lot of fun. This one may be a little uncomfortable for me, actually, when we talk about things like boundaries and using boundaries for better health. Now, neurologically, I can talk about boundaries all day and how the brain craves them, actually. When we look at kids and the developing brain and the developing nervous system, it's very important to have boundaries. As an adult, I don't know that I'm as great with setting those boundaries.
I'm going to say no.
For me. Yeah, this is one I get yelled at a lot for. Actually, and rightfully so, and we'll jump into that and talk about what I mean by that and why I'm getting yelled at for them. But boundaries are important, especially, like I said, for the developing brain, for kids, as their nervous system, as their brain is growing. They need to have schedules. They need some rigidity. Your brain is constantly testing boundaries and finding out where the edges of your world are, essentially, right? So if we look at what the brain does from a neurological perspective, it really just has 3 jobs. And I'm way oversimplifying, right? The brain is very complex. There's, billions of neurons and connections and things like that in the brain between the cerebellum and the cortex. But it really simply boils down to, you have to perceive the world around you. So you take in all of your sensory information, right? Then you have to do something with that. So you've got to process it, figure out what it means, put meaning and validity and your emotions and all of that stuff, meaning to what the world around you is. And then based on what you perceive and how you perceive it, or how you feel about it, so to speak, you then form a motor response. And that motor response can be in the form of movement. It can be in the form of emotions. It can be in the form of thoughts. It can be an immune function, like your immune cells going out and fighting something because you perceived a threat. Or it can be, in a lot of different ways. Gut function, digestion, you perceive the food that you eat. One of my favorite quotes it's actually from Ayurvedic medicine, is that everything is digested. And that means digestion, in the true sense of the word, is to be broken down and used as energy. So not only food is used as energy, but your interactions with people. And this is a weird one. This is one where I get a little bit off the rails even myself, is, if you ever have, and I'm sure she will talk about this quite a bit, somebody who, I call them energy vampires. You just you leave the relationship with them and you just feel drained. You can't digest that interaction very well. It's not feeding for both of you. It's usually the energy's going one way. And so there's some digestion that happens in your nervous system and in your brain. So we have these things that have to be perceived, processed, and then utilized and reacted to. So digestion is part of that, and it's part of it. And that's why I say all of that, is I want you to think about it. It's part of it in the broader sense of things. Just like motor movements in the broader sense of things can be anything from a movement to a thought or an emotion to immune function. Digestion, or that processing, happens in all of that too. And so this is one where, boundaries, like I said, they're hugely important. Kids' need to be told no. I know that we're in the gentle parenting age and all of that, and we can have some maybe we'll go into the deep end with some of those things at another time, but kids' brains need boundaries. They need to be told, I need to be home at this time. I need to do this. I need to clean my room before I get this. They need to see that rigidity, because it's how their brain tests the world around it. It needs to have an end. If it's the abyss, the brain doesn't process that well. It needs to see an end. It needs to see a boundary. And then it needs to be told it can get over that boundary. But at first, it needs to be able to test that and find a wall when it reaches out. If it doesn't find anything when it reaches out, that's when the brain goes into anxiety. And that's, to be honest with you guys, I think that's why we're where we're at with some of these. We see in our office, we see a lot more kids with anxiety than I have ever seen before. Yeah. And I think it's because kids have fewer boundaries now than they did when we were growing up. Now, don't get me wrong. We were Gen Xers. We were the whole feral thing and all that you see on social media. I think, if I needed to be home when the streetlights were on, other than that, I don't think my parents knew where I was from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. But at the same time, I knew I had to be home for dinner. I knew I had to be home at lunch. Those boundaries were very much set in place. And if I didn't adhere to that boundary, I knew exactly what the repercussion was for that. And I feel like in our world right now, kids are being asked to choose. Well, what do you want? Certain ages of the brain, they don't know how to do that. That's not healthy for the brain. As much as we may think that we're allowing kids to pick and choose, that's not necessarily the healthiest thing for the nervous system. Now, again, I'm not saying kids can't pick and choose and they shouldn't be able to be part of that, but we need to set some rigidity and we need to set some boundaries up along the way. And that plays into our adult lives as well.
Yep. So. Well, I want to go back to what you were talking about with how we digest everything, energy vampires, people that we kind of come around and you just feel that like drain and that in that. So he's talking more about the neurological perspective of it a lot. So everybody probably, and if you haven't, we're going to educate you on it, that we all have a magnetic field around us, the heart field, 3 feet, correct?
Yeah. So blood is a negative charge, right? It's negatively charged literally from polarity, like negative versus positive, and it runs through a circle. Any charge that runs in a circle creates an electromagnet. And our electromagnetic field is about 3 feet. So most of what the research shows is that we perceive things about 3 feet out from our body with that electromagnetic field.
Yes. So that being said, when you walk into a room and there's a lot of upset people or angry people or happy people, you're going to feel that. You don't have to necessarily look at the expressions on their faces. You don't have to. Your energy field is connecting with others' energy fields, and you can perceive that. You can feel that. Even if you're not a feeler and you're a thinker and you need all the research, there is a component of that you feel that. Well, when we talk about boundaries, because we have a lot of patients that will come in and say that, I don't feel like I have any boundaries with anybody. I feel like I have to do everything that's asked of me. I feel like I just have to. This
is the super moms, right? And I say super moms, it's most moms I've met.
Yep. And men too. We see there's men with it, maybe not as bad
in different ways,
but when people ask of something and they feel that they have to do it, that we aren't okay to set a boundary and say that you feel intuitively that maybe this isn't something I can add to my plate, or this is something that doesn't feel right, that I don't want to do this. But yet we're most of us have been raised to be polite and do what other people ask, which makes us kind of dismiss our boundaries with other people. We don't have to be rude to people and say, you're a jerk and no, I don't want to hang out with you. We can be polite about it and say, I have plans that day or I have something. But what we see a lot of is people struggling to set that boundary because now the guilt that they're feeling after that is just overwhelming. So in that perspective of being able to work through, like you talked about, perceiving your environment, it has to go through this processing, and then you have an output that you put. Well, as you're sitting there, thinking, okay, well, this person's asking me to do something and I don't want to, or I've got too much work projects, but if I don't do what I'm told, then I'm going to have repercussions because I was always told this is how I have to interact with people in life. Then now our output is being, kind of squashed into I have to show up and I have to do, instead of honoring what you need to do. So now you're not able to digest all these things that are happening. You're breaking this down. You're using up so much energy that now starts to take a hit on your own body, and you being able to be in that protective place of, okay, I want to be able to show up for my family later and have the energy for that. I want to be able to take personal time, because we all need to be doing self-care. We need to be doing things that, things that take us away from doing everything for everyone else. We have to have a cup to pour from. And when we give everything away, or we're always like allowing people to suck our energy and not allow us to have that boundary, then we start to see these health issues. We start to see, I'm not sleeping at night. I have anxiety. I can't, do this, that, and the next thing. And that's what we see a lot in the office. But every time it comes under to that, I feel guilty that I'm not showing up or doing something for somebody else. And that right there just shows that there's something that we need to work on. There's something that we need to personally, whether you're meditating or you're doing tapping, or if you're a patient in the office, let's do some emotional work around that.
No.
There's that word
work.
again.
No
There's that
emotional
word
work.
again.
Emotions aren't real. They're a figment of your imagination. What are these things you speak of?
But as you break those patterns in your brain so that you're able to say, yes, I'm okay saying no to something that doesn't feel congruent or that I don't feel is a good use of my energy, you're not a bad person for doing that. You're looking out for yourself. And I mean, let's break it down. All we have is ourselves. If we don't take care of ourselves and something happens to us, well, at work, we're just going to get replaced. Our family's going to be obviously going through terrible grief with the loss of us. We have to be able to take care of ourselves and do self-care. And I know there's a lot bigger push these days for people to be doing these things, but what we see is people struggling to be able to take that initiative because they feel so guilty putting themselves first. And so being able to establish and kind of figure out the boundaries, that where are you struggling with those boundaries? Are you able to tell somebody no if they invite you out and you just did something for the last 5 days and haven't had a night to yourself? Then maybe we can tell the person, hey, let's try doing it next week. But now, are you riddled with guilt? Do you feel shame? Are you feeling sadness because you didn't show up, or you feel like you disappointed somebody or let them down? Those are things to look at, because that's where some healing in you needs to come from to be able to keep those healthy boundaries around yourself. Think of it like a force field. We work on with patients, we'll talk about, how to establish almost putting yourself like in a bubble so that you're not taking on everybody else's stuff and you're able to be more in tune with you. I like to think of it like a bubble. And myself, with obviously a lot of the work that we do here, it's very intense work, and it's very hard to see people hurting and sad and wanting to get, through things that they're trying to heal from. And we often get asked by patients, like, how do you guys do this all day? Well, we have to have good boundaries. We want to be able to give and help people and guide them. But if I'm letting everybody take my energy from me, then we're depleting ourselves, then we get sick. So thinking of having I look at mine as an invisible bubble. I don't know what you put around you, but mine's a beautiful rainbow
You're supposed to put
bubble.
Something around me?
Oh, Lord, I taught you this years ago. Are you not using your protection mechanisms?
No, I get it. Yeah. And it's a lot of things for a lot of people, or just, focusing your energy and not giving up your energy, because you do need your energy to pour from, and having those boundaries. So, kind of back again with where she was talking about, and this is something, and I still struggle with this part I'm constantly working on this one, is you teach people how to treat you. Mm-hmm. Just like the child's brain is reaching out and experiencing the environment and looking for the edges to know where it's safe, right? That's why you got to touch the hot stove to know that it's hot, and then you don't make that mistake again. The adult brain does the same thing, and it does it in relationships constantly. You're constantly asking somebody for something, or kind of testing the boundaries of the relationship, right? We even use that as terminology. And so if somebody's asking you, hey, can you do this? And you say yes, well, they're going to push it further the next time. And they're going to say, well, can you also do this then? And if you say yes, then the next time they're going to be like, oh, cool, this guy does everything I ask. Can you also do this? And before you know it, you are the person, if you're the person saying yes, then you're constantly draining yourself to feed that other person. And it fits into, to some extent, people's personality types or archetypes. Is you've got some people, and I know we've got a little boy that we just started working with who's a people pleaser, right? You've heard of those people that they just want to please others. Mm-hmm. They will be completely depleted as long as other people are happy. And to some extent, some people's self-care is seeing somebody else be happy and be filled, but you got to make sure that you're getting energy from that you're not drained when you see that person happy. Mm-hmm. I know
then that leads into, now we feel resentment, and we get a lot of that resentment, and a lot of, now I can't say anything. Now I can't tell the person that I can't do something because I've always just done it. And if I don't, then I'm going to ruin the relationship, and on goes the story. And
yeah. But, you know, and that's where you got to kind of know yourself and where your
Mhm.
boundaries are, right? And this is part of how you experience. Like, I'm an introvert. I might be here on this and doing this, or like when I speak from the stage, I love doing that part too. And that really fills me up. But I get drained having to, I call it working a room. My job before we were here in Jacksonville, I worked with Life University. And one of the things, we always had an event, right? There was always something. And I loved it. It was great. But they drained me having to, you know, go around. And I loved all the people there. It was just the amount of people having to have those. I'm great one-on-one. We can sit down and chat all day. But if I've got to go from chat to chat to chat, I literally at some of these events, because they were draining my energy. I'd go in, I'd make a lap around, say hi to everybody. I'd have to walk in the hallway or walk outside and just relax for a little bit, and then I could go back in. So that was how I learned to set my boundary with those types of interactions, is I knew I still had to do that. It was part of the job.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think that was maybe the first time that boundaries really made sense to me in that way. And I still struggle with and you know this better than anybody, saying no. If anybody asks me anything, my default
Mhm.
answer is, sure, how can I help? Or what can I do? And then I find out that I don't have any time, maybe even to get through all of those things, but also then to get through my stuff that I need to do to keep myself happy or even just functional sometimes.
Yep.
So it's really about learning those boundaries. And when you are working with people, because you have people that go through things in your life, right? Like friends go through hard times and you want to
Mhm.
be there for them.
Yep.
And you just got to be careful not to give them you. You can give them your time, but not give them you. One of our great friends said this to me, and I'm going to screw it up. The definitions, the idea, as long as you take the idea behind it, I think is good, but I'm probably going to get the words wrong. But he always said the difference between sympathy and empathy. And this is where I really struggled early on as a doctor. In He said, you gotta, he observed me for like a day, and he's like, I already know what your issue is. He's a otherworldly guy. Hopefully we'll have him on a
Amazing.
podcast at one point. But just an amazing human being. He's like, you need to learn the definition between sympathy and empathy. And I was like, I don't even know what either of those two words mean, to be honest with you. And he said, sympathy is what you need as a doctor. You need to be sympathetic for your patients. You need to understand they're going through something. You need to be nice with them. He said, but you don't do that. He's like, you get in the pit with them.
Yeah.
And he's like, you take on their suffering and try to take them away from that. And then he said this, he goes, how dare you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm trying to help this person. I'm trying to be nice. And he said, how dare you don't allow that person to go through their journey and feel their feels and feel their pain. That's part of what their soul's here to do, or their whatever is here to do, is to learn that. They were put here to learn that lesson. And I was like, whoa, like you
Yep.
talk about mind blown. That blew my mind when he said that. And I was like, yeah, I do try to take their pain from them. I don't want them to hurt, so I want to take it from them and feel. It's almost, I always looked at it like the Green Mile, where I think it was Paul Coffey or whatever his name was, sucks the black out of everybody and then coughs it out. I always thought maybe I could do that, but the reality is our bodies don't. They literally hold on to it, and it drains our energy, and it causes us and our health and well-being to then be affected by that. So
Yeah. Everybody has a journey. Everybody has
Yeah.
something that they're supposed to be growing from. That's why, like you talked about the children and having boundaries. Well, it's important for people to go through these things. A lot of us can look back at stuff that happened 10 years ago. And yeah, it was a real big struggle, but I learned something from it. It made me a better person. And now I can help people even more so because of that journey. We have a patient that had recently gone through breast cancer. And after all the stuff that she's gone through and all the different things that she's tried, she has turned into a huge person to connect with other patients that we've had, because it's almost like she's finding her purpose. Like, she went through this and it was horrible. And when you're in the throes of it, it's awful. But then being able to be there to help guide someone like this that's going through it, instead of taking it from them, allowing them to grow in their purpose that they're here for, has given her something that she's now able to help others. And that, what a blessing. So that was a huge, I remember when you came home that night and it was like a cloud had just moved out of your way and you saw the sun for the first time. It was like a connection. It was so cool of, yeah, I'm here to help guide, but none of us are healing anybody. We're helping guide you to your own healing. And that, sometimes is painful, and sometimes it hurts, and sometimes it's just awful. And you've
It's
got
always messy.
emotions. It's got to
Yeah.
deal with those
There's
emotions.
never any emotions in it, but it's always messy. Well, and that's how we got here too, right? And I often look, and after he said that, that was, I think, the one thing that I really perseverated on after that night was, yeah, he's right. Like I'm taking it from them, because I often say, and we'll talk more at a later date, I went through a paralysis injury, and I was told I was never going to walk again. There were all sorts of things, right, in my history. And I know you have your journey and stuff like that too. And I often say that that never happened to me. It happened for me. And when I look at the journey, it was something that I had to go through in order to get to where I'm at now. So it wasn't something that happened to me, but for me. And how dare I try to take that away from somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that was the one thing that really hit me, was I know I went through mine, and it seemed like when I was going through it, this is happening to me. Why me? Poor me. But on the back side of it, I wouldn't trade where I'm at for anything.
Nope.
And I love where I'm at. And I love that I was turned into the person that I am now because of what I went through. You can't sharpen a sword with a feather, right? You have to sharpen a sword with a stone. And sometimes it hurts, and sometimes it breaks things off. And that's a painful journey, but it's part of the journey nonetheless.
And the people that get to be there for that journey should be helping guide, but not take that from you. So that's where we talk about those boundaries and being able to, so maybe a friend of yours is going through something that's harder, a family member, allow them to be there, be that shoulder that they can, fall over on and cry on and be supportive of, but keep your boundaries around yourself, that you're not trying to take that on from them and deplete your own resources, your own energy, and your own, what you need to be there for that person, to be able to show up for them. And I think that's where we've learned so much of this in the work that we do. And we've found a lot of different things to help us with that. I know early on, we started using some crystals, and we were introduced to different stones and healing crystals to help kind of remind us to keep those boundaries, to keep ourselves protected, so that we, with the empathetic hearts, want to be able to help the person and whatnot, but knowing that I'm not going to be able to show up for the next 20, 30 years of this if I don't take care of my own body. And this applies to everyone, whether you're in the healing field or you're in anything that's interactive with people, always wanting to kind of use resources to help yourself keep boundaries. And so two of the things that that I'm going to kind of talk real quickly about, that, to help people with this, and leave messages below, and I'd be happy to fill in, answer any questions people have. Bronzite crystals are wonderful for helping us keep our boundaries. Black tourmaline is another one. I know you really like malachite. You keep that one in your pocket a lot. But to help with keeping yourself from taking everything else on from other people. The other thing that we often will tell people about, mostly you'll send people to me to start to do, but in that bubble, like I was kind of describing, whenever I start my day in the office, I always try to connect to something higher than me, whether you believe in the God or in the universe or source, or call it whatever, or even just grounding yourself into Mother Earth, but giving yourself kind of a connection, making yourself kind of solid. I envision a white light coming down from the heavens, coming into my body, which is giving me godly energy, heavenly energy to help all of my patients, everybody I encounter. But I'm putting a protective bubble around myself, so that when I am coming in contact with people, I'm not trying to take everything from them, but I'm allowing them to explore their journey, go through what they're going through, but let me be a resource to help you and to get through that, so that you can become that person or get through this tough time that you're going through. But I'm protecting myself as well, so that I can show up for more people and we can continue to help other people. And this goes for everybody out there. So I don't know if you have anything that you do that you're, that's my thing every morning when I come into the office, is I connect, put a bubble around me, and then I'm ready to go. Bring everybody on, bring me your problems, bring me your tears. Let's get through some of this stuff and make everybody vibrate higher and be healthier and more whole inside.
Yeah, no, and I think the only thing that I really do regularly, or every time I get going in the morning is there was a saying that was given to me, and it was a long saying about keeping your energy. My energy is my energy. But when I know I'm going to walk into something draining, or when I have a friend who's dealing with something that I need to reach out to and help them work through as well, whether it's patients, friends, family, whatever it is, it's just I kind of repeat the phrase over and over again. My energy is my energy. And just so that I know that I'm not giving them mine, but I'm still able to show up for them and be there for them. But we've got to have that boundary. Again, I'm a work in progress on this one, learning to say no. It's still the hardest word in the English language for me to master, even though I think it's the same word in every language, just about. Nine. Maybe if I learn it in German or something like that, I'll be better at it. I don't know.
All right.
But it's a hard word for me to say, and it's something though that we've got to constantly do. And like we said, females go through this. I'd say the super mom kind of just naturally does for everybody. They're pulled in all different directions. Guys are the same way. We just do it in a different way, and it affects us, I think, in a little bit of a different way. Guys, usually their first sign and symptom of burnout is we try to do everything for everybody, but that's the first sign that we're actually starting to fail. It's almost like a rabid dog is going to attack when it is hurting the most. And I feel like guys do that too. And then we tend to turn around and internalize it after that. But so there's different ways, but guys have to make sure they're not always doing for others as well, and making sure they're taking time for themselves in a different way, I think, than females. Mm-hmm. Females are great about, going and getting the massage, doing the self-care in that way. I don't know that guys get the same thing out of that, that women do, that females do. Females tend to do better with interactions with others. I think guys do better with interactions within themselves. So that's where the guy might need to go fishing, maybe with one buddy, and not say a word to each other while they're out there fishing. That sounds miserable. Or go throw some weights around, be more physical. Physicality is going to be more the way for guys to take care of themselves. And maybe even alone time, being able to isolate the brain a little bit. The left brain is more isolated, and males typically come more from that left side. Whereas females, the mouth needs to move as much as the legs do, but they need to maybe go for a walk and solve the world's problems. That's going to be how that self-care happens for them and how they set that boundary. Whereas men, if we need to break away from helping others and doing for others, it's probably going to be more in isolation. So it's not necessarily the massage or those types of things that are self-care for a guy. So it may not look the same. Sure. It might be the guy going out and building a table or doing some woodworking, which is kind of what I use as my way out. I might disappear to the garage for a while, and that's the way that I can shut my brain down and kind of do that. But having that outlet, having that way to do things, I think is huge. Mm-hmm. But again, just the importance of setting boundaries for the brain, whether it's in kids, right? Kids need to be able to feel the edges of things. Mm-hmm. And otherwise you end up with anxiety, and the adult brain needs to feel the edges of things too. Otherwise, we end up with the same thing. We end up with anxiety, and we're seeing, unfortunately, we're seeing the rates of anxiety, depression, mental health just skyrocket. Yeah. And I think, obviously with the aloneness that happened in COVID times, that was a big springboard for that. Is it isolated a lot of brains? It didn't give us that interaction, that social connection. It almost created too much of a boundary and cut us off from the world. That's not necessarily healthy. But it's important as we start to interact with others to make sure we have those comfortable boundaries so that we don't end up with that not being able to see or feel the end of the earth or the end of our environment, which then drives our brain into that anxiety type of feeling. So just be careful in setting boundaries for yourself. Learn how to say no, not only to others for you doing things for them, but learn how to say no to your kids for them not being able to necessarily do everything they want to do, to allow them to have that boundary for better neurodevelopment and neurogeneration.
Boundaries are essential. And if there's something that you feel you're struggling with to set those boundaries, look into that. Your body's trying to tell you something. There's a reason why. Figure out what that is so that you can work through that, help yourself so that you can be healthier and less dealing with anxiety and things like that.
Thank you. We'll see you guys next time. Enjoy the holidays. This was a big one for the holidays, right? Setting boundaries, being able to say no and things like that. We recorded this right around holiday time. So going into the new year, set this up as your kind of way of looking at things.